Good evening and welcome to the October 4th, 2018 regular meeting of the Novi Board of Education. We thank you for being here, and I would appreciate a roll call vote. Mr. Mena?
Trustee Cook. Here. Trustee Smith.
Here.
Trustee Hood.
Here.
Trustee Mena here. Trustee Murphy.
Here.
Trustee O'Connor.
Here.
Trustee Stevenson.
Here.
Perfect. If you would all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Fantastic. The first item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. I would entertain a motion. Yes.
The question before the motion, did we table superintendent's goals and objectives, or are they, I don't see them on there.
Good point. We will make sure they're on there for the next agenda.
Okay.
All right. Approval. Mrs. Hood.
Thank you. I move that we approve the agenda as stated.
All right.
Support.
Been moved by Mrs. Hood and supported by Mrs. Stevenson. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Motion carries 7-0. This is National Principals Month, and recognizing that, I will read a resolution that we will vote to honor our principals, expressing support for the designation of October 2018 as National Principals Month. Whereas the National Association of Secondary School Principals, the National Association of Elementary School Principals, and the American Federation of School Administrators have declared the month of October 2018 as National Principals Month. Whereas principals and assistant principals are expected to be educational visionaries, instructional leaders, assessment experts, disciplinarians, community builders, public relations experts, budget analysts, facility managers, special programs administrators, and guardians of various legal, contractual, and policy mandates and initiatives, as well as being entrusted with young people, the most valuable resource. Whereas principals set the academic tone for their schools and work collaboratively with teachers and teacher leaders to develop and maintain high curriculum standards, develop mission statements, and set performance goals and objectives. Whereas the vision, dedication, and determination of a principal provides the mobilizing force behind any school reform effort. Whereas leadership is second only to classroom instruction among all school-related factors that contribute to what students learn at schools, according to research conducted by the Wallace Foundation. Whereas the NAESP, National Distinguished Principals Program, honors exemplary elementary and middle-level public, private, and independent school leaders, as well as leaders from the United States Department of Defense Schools and the United States Department of Overseas Schools for outstanding leadership for student learning and the profession. Whereas the NASSP National Principal of the Year program began in 1993 as a means to recognize outstanding middle level and high school principals who have succeeded in providing high-quality learning opportunities for students, as well as their exemplary contributions to the profession. Whereas the American Federation of School Administrators promotes the professional and occupational interests of public school principals, administrators, and supervisors across the nation. Whereas the celebration of National Principals Month would honor elementary, middle level, and high school principals and recognize the importance of school leadership in ensuring that every child has access to a high-quality education. And whereas the month of October 2018 would be an appropriate month to designate a National Principals Month, now therefore be it resolved that the House of Representatives, 1, honors and recognizes the contributions of school principals and assistant principals to the success of students in the nation's elementary, middle, and high schools, and 2, encourages the people of the United States to observe National Principals Month with appropriate ceremonies and activities that promote awareness of school leadership in ensuring that every child has access to a high-quality education. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Novi Community School District Board of Education, 1, recognizes the month of October 2018 as National Principals Month, and 2, honors the contribution of Novi School District principals and assistant principals. David Asher at Novi Woods Elementary, Julie Bedford at Deerfield Elementary, John Brickey at Novi Meadows Elementary, Alex O'Feely at Village Oaks Elementary, Nicole Carter at Novi High School, Lisa Fenchel at Novi Meadows Elementary, Jennifer Mikos at Parkview Elementary, Pamela Quittiquit at Orchard Hills Elementary, Robert Baker at Novi Middle School, Melissa, I hope I'm saying this right, is it Eads? Mm-hmm. Novi High School, Ronald Kane at Novi High School, Katie Dinkelman at Novi High School, and Andrew Combe at Novi High School. Novi Middle School. All those in favor of declaring this resolution adopted, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries 7-0. Thank you. We do recognize our outstanding principals. They have done a fabulous job, and we have obviously some new ones to welcome to the district as well. So welcome to them, and congratulations on jobs well done. Next, we have a report to the board. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Scott Morrell, a senior facilitator for the Michigan Association of School Boards, will explain the importance of having a strategic plan and developing aligned goals. He will walk the board through the process and benefits of creating and having a comprehensive strategic plan for the Novi Community School District. Mr. Morrell, we invite you to the podium.
As we met previously, strategic planning was discussed, and you guys were encouraged about it. So I was asked to come back and talk about the process. I met with Dr. Matthews and President Murphy about 3 weeks ago to go over the process so they had an understanding of it. And we want to talk about that tonight and answer any questions you may have. So in the last 10 years, the NSBA, National School Board Association, has done a lot of work into the research of best practices, what works, how to make school boards better. And they've built the 4 pillars: vision, structure, accountability, advocacy, and it's all things you've seen in the past. But how do we put those into action? And that's what strategic planning is about. It's taking really your work, encouraging participation from everybody, not giving away your responsibility, but gathering all that. So no longer is a strategic plan their plan or our plan, it's the Novi plan. And so now everybody is helping each other and pulling in the same direction. And that we do through stakeholder groups. And I'll show you that with. But really, it's turning those pillars, those 4 pillars, into the district goals. You already have those. The district improvement plan. Key works and goals of the board, which you guys work on every year. Superintendent performance goals and standards. You just brought up, Mr. O'Connor, about setting the goals for superintendent and the whole evaluation process. And with the new evaluation process, 10% of it is progress towards strategic planning. And so that's part of it. And then leads to the district staff performance and goals. But how do we get criteria? How do we build that data for those evaluations? And that's what strategic planning is about, is it's helping us find those evaluation points. It's setting up monitoring processes as you go forward as a board. So what's the process? It's really what you want to be in the next 3 to 5 years. And we don't set plans more than 5 years in Michigan anymore. They're just, things change too quick. And so we look at a 3 to 5 year window. Usually most strategic plans will have 3 to 4 points of emphasis or goal areas, usually with 1 or 2 goals under each. It's limited in scope because we don't want to try to kill the whole elephant in one bite. And so by bringing everybody together, we help focus that. Now, it's not replacing school improvement plans, building improvement plans, district improvement plans. It's enhancing it. Usually it's the wraparound pieces. It's not always straight. We want an increase of 2% in math. It's all those things to support those kind of program. So it brings us to common causes. It brings everybody to the same place and point. Everybody has the same voice. And that's key to what we talk about in our strategic planning process is everybody has the same voice. A parent, a student, an administrator, superintendent, board member, when we have our retreat and we bring everybody together, we're 40, 50 people who care about Novi schools, and all the voices need to be heard. And so everybody has stakes in the process. So we talk about, yes, you can do this yourself. A lot of districts do. But why an outside facilitator? Partly because we're neutral. We're here to facilitate the process. Our job is to get you from point A to point B. But part of it, too, is because of us, any data gathering, the electronic surveys, they're not foiable because the third parties gathered them. And so when those pointed comments come in, it doesn't become fodder. You'll get copies of it all, but we're able to clean those up so that names when we do electronic survey, because there's 2 data points. We meet with we do in-persons, we'll spend a day, we'll set up 8, 10 input sessions, and we'll meet with stakeholders all day long to get their input. And they'll have about a 3-week window to do an online survey with the same questions. And so it gives them all an opportunity to participate. District your size will probably get 400 to 500 responses in that process. But in that process you may get some things that aren't necessarily valid or are derogatory to an individual. We may call somebody's name out. Before we give you that, we pull those names out. You'll get the overall comment minus that name. There's no value added to targeting a staff member, a community member, administrator, or board member. But that's a benefit by using a neutral third party, because then we get to not control them, but because of the third party, the FOIA isn't involved. Our experience. I was a parent. I started strategic planning almost 20 years ago. I was a parent on Centerlines. Then I was a board member. Then I served on it as education and foundational chair. And now I facilitate them. I've done 14 of them in the last 5 years. So I've got a lot of experience. I've worked in districts of 400 kids all the way up to 6,000 and 7,000 students. So
Hey,
we've worked the gamut. Go ahead.
I'm-
Am I moving away
I
too
think
much?
you're moving maybe too far away from the microphone.
Microphone?
I'm
Okay.
just guessing. Can you guys hear him?
Okay.
Okay,
I'll keep talking loud though.
okay, that's fine.
So there's experience from having facilitators who's done this and helped other districts through the process. That's what we bring to the table. It's not just me, it's our whole staff that is available to us for data gathering and preparation. Our process is about a 12-week process. You're in the first pre-planning stage right now, and that's getting to the point where you say, yeah, let's do it. Let's get going. We look at the scope, do analysis of where you're at right now. Then we start gathering data. The qualitative and quantitative, that's that input. But we also have shared with your superintendent, your board president, who will get it out to you guys if you approve the process, a list of about 12 comparable districts. You can pick any districts in Michigan you want. We just get you a starting point so it's not overwhelming. You pick 6 reference districts. We pull about 45 data points, Novi against these other districts, and that's the data we use. It's not just academic data, it's demographic data, social economic, all those kind of educational attainment, school of choice, college readiness, college completion. There's a lot of reports we bring to the table. That's all part of the process for you. We gather all that. Part of the process is to limit the impact to your staff. Dr. Matthews has plenty of work to do already. His administrative team have plenty of work to do. The idea is not for them to have to do all this gathering and everything. It's turnkey. We bring it to you. When it's all said and done, we deliver the 50 books of data all in color print. That's not done by the district. That's all our work. And so we try to limit the time and energy from your staff in this process. Strategic formulation, that's our Saturday retreat. That's the November 17th date that we've tentatively set. We bring about 50 people from the community, from the board, from the staff, stakeholders. We don't invite, say, the teachers. We let the teachers tell us who they want to send. So we have credibility. So no one can go back and say, you cherry-picked. No, you pick who you want to come. Staff, your job is to help us identify the business, the parental, the community leaders, all those, because you know those people. And so we want those people brought to the table. We need representation from everybody. The only group that's totally represented would be the 7 of you. Otherwise, it's groups representing each subgroup of your district. You're there to listen and kind of hear all that input that day. By the end of that day, though, we have a strategic plan in place. We don't have the plan of actions yet, but that day we'll have our your vision, your mission, your core values, and your goals developed before we leave on that Saturday. It's a long day, but by the end of the day, it's exciting because we can see the formulation of the plan right there. Then what we do is we come in and we set the goal teams and action plans. What we do is we come in, meet with the administrators and the team leaders, those who are going to be the implementers, and those who we've hired as professionals. We come together for about a 3 to 4 hour session, and that group starts looking at the plan of actions, the strategies, and develops what's going to be in the first year, and then we carve it down to the first 90 days. And that's what's all presented to you as a board. So you'll get the whole plan, plus you'll get the first year priority objectives in the first 90-day. That's where our work stops as a board. The plan of actions, how we get there, that's Dr. Matthews and his team. Okay? Once that's all prepared, we prepare all the documents. It's presented to you as a board. At that point, you approve the strategic plan. If there's issues, we take it back to the planning team. We don't usually, what I joke about is we don't do line item veto. It's all or nothing. So if the board had an issue, we would take it and bring the team back together electronically usually. 14 times, knock on wood, we haven't had to take it back to a board. Because you've been involved in the process. And so we know, what you're looking for. We know what the community's looking for. So we don't have that. Once you approve it, you're basically turning to Dr. Matthews and say, get it implemented. And that's all part of what we work with you to do. So that's pre-planning is really what we've been working. I would expect to have this to you completed by the end of the year. If we hit the November 17th date, we should be able to have implementation about 2 weeks later, and by mid-December we should have all your documentation done and back to you. So by the end of the year you could have it, which is nice because that leads right into the new year, new fiscal year. You have a strategic plan in place, you can ramp it right up, not wait another year. Now it's the leading document for our district. What's nice is it now says what the board expects from everybody in our school district, because now it's the guiding document. It's the now 3 to 5 year plan. When we do it, we boil it down to one page. We give you all this other documentation, but really it comes down to a one-page strategic plan, because we don't want that 6-inch ring binder in somebody's office that 5 years later we pull out. We've all seen them. You need the hazmat suit to go get it because it's collected all the cobwebs and dust and mites and all that. We don't want that. What we want is it right in front of you. I actually prepare a placemat for you, ledger sized, full color with everything on it, so it sits right in front of you at your board table. So as you're meeting, even as you decide what's our goals, it's right there in front of us, so that every time you make a decision, you're looking down and say, okay, where does this help us towards our vision, our mission, our core values, or our goals? It becomes the guiding document for a whole district, and it makes life for you guys a lot cleaner, smarter, easier, because now we have a guiding document as a team. Okay. Again, face-to-face, that's us. We come in, I'll spend a whole day. Usually we say 5 to 6 sessions. As I shared with your superintendent, I'll come in for a day. You got me all day. From 7 in the morning to 7 at night, you can schedule me every 45 minutes if you want. You get the full day. And so we'll schedule as many input sessions. We do it by groups. So if we do a support staff, it's only support staff, no leadership in the room. We want them to be open. I'll meet with administrators without Dr. Matthews because we want them to be open. One of the questions we ask is, what's the barriers to success? And sometimes, unfortunately, the administrators go, it's that guy in the middle seat. And that's okay, but I need to know that so that we have success. That's our job as the facilitators, is to help you knock those barriers down as you go forward. Again, the quantitative is all those demographics, financial, the retreat we talked about, and then the implementation stage. We're all part of it. We deliver all your reports, adopt your plan, and we're there to help you through the process. What we ask you and we encourage you to do is to do an annual renewal. Next year, you bring that same team together for an hour or two in the evening. All those who are implementing come in and give a 5-10 minute update. If something needs to be changed, then that core group gets to recommend to you guys, say, hey, we need to change. So things change. But instead of you just arbitrarily changing it, because now it becomes the board's plan and no longer the Novi plan, we continue. Those voices carry a lot of weight in the community. When we get the community leaders, those who, as I talked to Dr. Matthews and President Murphy, I want the person that really is loud about Novi and doesn't like what you're doing. We want them there. Because if we can get them to neutral or positive, then they become our biggest, because they have credibility in the community. And so they become. I did it up in the UP, and we had a gentleman spend a week up there. He went to every input session, every planning session. They ended up putting him as chairperson of a committee. He now serves on the board. He flipped from being totally anti-school district to now he serves on their school board because he saw the inner workings, because we brought him to the table. And that's what our hope is to bring everybody, give them the inside so they understand what you guys are doing. I've already shared templates with Dr. Matthews. We left a flash drive. We have all the templates for them to use. Input session, meeting updates, all that is already there, and we help them through that process. So what's your role? What's your role? Well, to approve or statement of support, that's really how you guys do it. Some boards approve it. Some just say, yes, we support it, go. We don't tell you how to do that. Part of it, that's up to you and your processes. Providing input, you need to encourage support. We need those people at the table, and so that's one of your big things. Select the reference districts. If you say yes, we need to get those going in the next couple of weeks so that we can get that data pulled. Again, suggest participants for the planning session, be at the retreat, be the table leaders, help make sure everybody's getting heard and everybody has a voice that day. Adopt it and then monitor it, and we'll help you all the way through that process, okay? So, I know there's going to be questions. What can I answer?
A lot of information in a short period of time.
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Stevenson.
I do have a couple questions. How many participants serve on the team, and how often do you change those members? Like, so do they stay on for 3 years and then you change it after so often?
They're there for the duration. So if it's a 5-year cycle, 3 to 5 year cycle, that team will be in place. Now, people come and go, and we can replace them. You know, you're going to put students on it. Well, students graduate. I don't.
Hopefully they're not here.
Yeah, hopefully they're not here for the whole time unless we put a middle schooler on. But we want some students to serve on it. But as they rotate out, we bring other students to bring it involved. But that core group, we keep together for that time until you as a group say, we've got about 85% done. It's time to celebrate that and renew. It's when you're at the 80-85% completion, it's time to celebrate where we're at. Keep those there. We're not giving those up, but it's time to relook at the value, the data, and start again. You bring a new team in. Okay? Does that help? And team usually 40 to 50. District your size, if you needed more, we can handle. I've done it up to 60, 65. And if we need to, we just bring a second person in on that retreat data to help us through that process. So,
Thank you.
Other
Yep.
board members? Mr. Smith?
I apologize if I didn't see this in a previous communication. What's the cost and how is that structured?
I didn't. So that's MASB. I know.
Yep,
we set up proposals.
I'll share the cost in the
Okay.
weekly. It's I think approximately $8,000.
And that's for the 5-year period or whatever? Okay.
It's based on student enrollment, I think.
It's based on enrollment. You know, it's by tiers. We haven't changed our pricing. I mean, it's not. We haven't changed it in the last 5 years. It doesn't do any follow up. Like the first year retreat, that's additional, but up to that first year retreat. But I'm local, I'm here, so I'm available to come out and work with you guys. I've met with them. You know, we don't charge for all. You're not getting charged for me to be here tonight. And we're here to help you guys, so we'll be through that process. Usually it's 50% down, 50% at completion. So. Okay.
Other board members have questions,
Anybody else?
comments about
This side.
Mr. O'Connor?
So I think there's a couple of issues here we have to talk about as a board. First of all, whether we even want to do this, if it's of value, and then secondly, who should do the facilitation? Should it be MASB or somebody else? One of my concerns with doing this process right now is one of timing and would we confuse the community? And when I say confuse the community, I say that in the sense that we've been doing, obviously, pieces of this over the last 10 years while Dr. Matthews has been here. It hasn't been as systematic as this process is. But we've been pretty successful as a district doing our own strategic planning on a piecemeal basis, and we've really been able to gain the support of the community and the trust of the community over the last 10 years. If I may digress for a minute, just from a historical perspective, I remember being one of 100 people on a strategic plan for the schools back in last decade. And I remember going through, 6 or 7 meetings, and we got the big glossy thing and all the words and this and that. And a year and a half later, the superintendent retired. And nobody even remembers what was on that piece of paper, and it was never used because, and understandably so, a new superintendent came on board and wanted, in this case, his or her strategic plan, working with board members. If you remember when we hired Dr. Matthews, that's exactly what we did as a board. The first thing, Dr. Matthews facilitated it, and we as a board spent a whole day as a board putting together those fundamental precepts by which our district has been running for the last 10 years under Dr. Matthews' leadership. They've been reinforced. People understand them. People know them. It's been communicated well, not only to cabinet people, to principals, to teachers, but also people in the community. And that's kind of, if you will, that's kind of the first step of this strategic planning process, if you will. Now, in terms of community engagement, certainly we didn't get involved with the quantitative and qualitative, research, which is being proposed here. The database with 500 people, et cetera. And I'm not saying that that's a bad process either. My concern is, will something like that cause confusion in the community? Because the next thing we did after those 2 or 3 years of really establishing our fundamental precepts is that we did get board engagement for the 2014 bond. We started that in 2012. I believe that was your second year after we had established these goals, and we reached out to the community and we got a facilities assessment, and we talked about the facilities assessment. We, as Mr. Morrell said, we got those naysayers. I think there were 15 to 20 people in the room in terms of what we would want in a bond, what were our important, what capital expenditures that we want, how were those bond proposals matching our 4 district goals, which we have put together. And we put together that bond committee, if you will, and we was presented to the board, a resolution was passed, and then we started communicating it out, and $70 million later, after a 74%, I believe, approval from the community, we had all the resources that we need, again, meeting our 4 district goals. So again, if you look at it piecemeal, we're doing a lot of the things that are in this process. So I apologize for taking all this time, but I think we need to have a historical perspective on this because we have a bond coming up in 2020. And I would argue we need to follow that same process that has been successful, that the community understands, that'll match our 4 district goals, that'll match the action plans that we've put together in terms of what Dr. Matthews' objectives are. We've been working on that for the last 2 or 3 months. Again, all these pieces are in place. I guess what I'm saying is I think it's more valuable to have a strategic plan. Quite frankly, after Dr. Matthews retires, if there was a new leader, okay, in our community, if you will, where there might want to be a different direction, okay, and making sure that there would be board alignment with that new superintendent, I think that's the time to do it. To start reaching out to 500 people now with focus groups and the quantitative data is going to confuse people if we do that, and then we go through our bond process where we get our facility assessment, we reach out to the community to get input on the bond, we put together a community bond committee. Everything overlaps, and it really doesn't follow a process that we've been doing, quite frankly, for 10 years that I personally feel has been very successful.
Can I respond to a couple of those questions in historical perspective? The strategic plan is the board's plan. The vision of a district is the board. It's not the superintendent. It's the superintendents to drive it. What's nice about a strategic plan is it transcends superintendents, it transcends board members. I can tell you, for example, in Clinton, if you reach out to Clinton Community Schools, we did it with a 20-year superintendent, Dr. Prey. Okay, he's a well-known building named after him. He was retiring. They go, do we do it? We did it. As we finished it, we were in the first year of implementation. we went out and did a search. Part of that search was, here's the strategic plan, here's the board operating procedures. Can you live within these? If you couldn't as a superintendent, there's probably not a good fit. And so candidates knew right up. Now, did they make tweaks to it? Yeah. Did they gut it? No, because that was the community's plan. It was the board with all the stakeholders. It's transcended them, and it really blossomed that brand new superintendent because now he had a plan to come into that was already established. People were running with it. He didn't need to hit the ground and say, okay, we need to come up with this whole new great plan. There was already planned. Just like new board members. And one of the things we talked about with the election is any candidates would be part of our Saturday planning team, so they would be involved. So if they rotate onto the board, they'd be part of it. So it really does help with the transitions. The other piece is, this isn't saying that what you're doing is bad. What we're giving you is another opportunity to continue to move forward, to expand on it, to look at the research and the data that we bring, the experience we bring, the hundreds of strategic plans that we've done, and the data research we pulled that you don't have to do. Our data research takes 14 to 18 hours, man hours, to pull all that data together for you guys. So it's in depth, and so it's database. It's no longer, we should work on this. It's coming from a data point. It's a database, community-driven, stakeholder-driven. So just so I understand your passions, Mr. O'Connor, and you know, however the board wants to go, but I did want to share those past histories.
That's why we're having this discussion.
Yep.
You know, I would argue the strategic plan does not transcend because it, by definition, if it's 3 to 5 years, it can't transcend. You know, if it's 10 years, yes, it transcends. But a strategic plan won't in a 3 to 5 year period. And quite frankly, in a 3 to 5 year period, we've got to focus on this bond and what the community wants and what they're going to support and how it's going to match our district goals and how we're going to get those resources to make sure that we increase student achievement. Again, I'm not disagreeing with anything that you're saying. The idea that you bring all this data to the party, I think that's great. I think that's separate from a strategic plan. I don't want to confuse the community. We've had processes in place that the community is used to, and we've got a bond coming up in a year and a half. Why confuse the community?
Okay, well, Mrs. Hood.
Well, I would argue that resetting goals and initiatives and a mission and engaging the community is probably a good exercise at this point. And then when we do go to the bond, it will be a good dovetail from the goals that we have set and the feedback we have gotten from stakeholders on what the district should do next. And so it seems logical to me that we would do the strategic plan and then request the bond because we'd have a better idea of what we need the bond money for.
Okay, I want to say a couple things. First, when we originally did the planning, I don't believe it was 10 years ago when Dr. Matthews came on.
8 years ago.
8 years ago, we started the process. Maybe we've had them in place for 7 years, which to me, originally I thought we were talking about, when we originally talked about the vision, it would be kind of a 5-year vision, and the goals would be kind of 5-year goals. Am I incorrect about that?
It's helpful to review goals on a regular basis, and so.
Well, and I know we've tweaked them a little
we
bit.
have.
It's not like we haven't looked at them at all. We've tweaked them a little bit, but we didn't involve anybody in the community at that point. The conversations were really within the board, and we do represent the community. I understand that, and our administrators. We have a new team. We've all, I think, in the last 8 years, our demographics have changed. We've got a lot of needs that have changed. I know the mental health dialogues conversation the other night with a maxed out number of parents present. There's in my opinion a feel that there's also different needs that maybe we need to be looking at whether or not those are something that are of value to our community and whether or not they may need to be a portion or a part of the strategic plan. I don't know that for sure because we have not engaged the community in this way. So, and it's my understanding, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, that this would be in place for the 1920 school year, right? Like, we would put that in place, so the discussions would be now. I know that, Mr. O'Connor, you've even, not been happy that our superintendent goals aren't adopted by the start of the school year. To me, this allows us to have those all in place prior to the school year starting, if we start now. I mean, I'm not saying that we need to if the board chooses to wait on this or whatever, but I'm in agreement with Mrs. Hood that we would have 40 new people potentially, I don't know, maybe not 40, who would be champions of the district. They've all worked on this together. They'd all have ownership of it, and then that maybe even a bond committee would be formed as a result of that group of people. So, in my opinion, it makes sense. So I know Dr. Matthews gets dinged on the superintendent evaluation. We've also talked about, I know that I mentioned, how do we use those surveys? I know we've used our staff surveys to drive our professional development. We've used some of the other surveys to drive the mental health thing. But so there's all these little pieces of things that we're doing, that we're incorporating, but we don't have this comprehensive overall strategy that, I shouldn't say that. We have our vision, our mission and goals, but
Yes, we do.
yes, but we've got all these other different initiatives that are based on needs that to me have this underlying feel of there's this going on, there's this going on, there's this going on. Okay, I think there's a definite, I'll pick on the mental health piece of it, not to pick on you, Dr. Weber, but clearly that's a need in our community because there's parents that are coming to these meetings all the time. I don't know really where that fits in our strategic plan. I don't know if it does. But to me, there's been demographic changes that are significant. We've got more growth going on, so there's probably going to be more demographic changes. We've got technological changes that have happened in the last 7 years. We've got just a lot of very different things that have changed. And I don't think engaging our community at this point, we've had how many people show up? 14 people? No, how many people? 22 people originally applied to be on our board. 22 people. We've got a lot of people that are very interested in being a part and participating in this district. And this is a great opportunity to use a lot of those people to come alongside us to say, okay, what is it that we can do to improve and enhance and continue to go forward? I don't think we should ever be content with the status quo, ever. Yes.
So your argument just, I think, reinforced my point. You just said we're going to put together this strategic planning committee of 40 or 50 people, and then that'll lead to a bond committee. This is, why have one committee after another committee after another committee? If there's a need in the community, you say mental health, that's fine, okay? We need financing to address whatever that need is, okay? There's going to be a money need, okay? Where are we going to get that money? It's not going to come from Lansing. We have an opportunity with a bond to address those needs, and that's what we did with our list of 14, 15 things, everything from a new preschool building to a fitness center to new furniture to help our land. And all those things were aligned to our 4 goals. So yeah, let's get those 22 people in and involved, but let's do it under the auspices of a bond committee, and let's roll and let's start making it happen.
Well, then at what point in time do we revisit our vision and goals? Because I know that we've had some conversations about at least one of our goals, the one creating opportunities, isn't really in line with kind of movement forward. So when does that take place, that conversation?
If you want to change the words, to me, that's a separate initiative. Let's not confuse the community.
We have a smart community, Mr. O'Connor. I don't really think that our community is that easily confused about strategic planning, that probably many of them are involved in it already for parts of their work. So I think that's short-sighted in terms of who our community is.
Committee after committee
Smith,
after committee after committee for no
Mr. Smith,
reason.
would you have a comment?
I have a question, please. I think I'm clear on where Mr. O'Connor and where you, President Murphy, are thinking. Being the newer member at the table, I would value hearing even a 2-minute version from Mr. Cook, Mr. Mena, Mrs. Stevenson on what do you think?
For me, what's important to understand what the end output is from the strategic account, from this strategic plan, and I don't have that picture yet. Mm-hmm. What might be helpful is if you said you've been through like 14 of these. You can find maybe a couple of them that are most similar to our district and share those with us. Mm-hmm. because
Like what the end product is?
yeah, what this actually looks like. I'd love to answer your question, but we're going to end up with something that's very similar to 14 other strategic plans that have already been done within a certain range, and I have no idea what this thing looks like. I don't have any idea yet. Once that's completed, exactly how we act on it. I don't know how deep we're going to go. I don't know if we're going to have actual line items of things that we want to, tangible things. I mean, I'm a tangible guy.
Yeah, sure.
Tangible things that we're going to accomplish. I don't know ultimately what we're going to gain by this document yet, not having seen an example of one.
Okay. You're making notes, or you want to address
Yeah,
that?
well, I'm trying to get my email. I can send something to you real quick. What it is we do that, but all those tangible pieces are developed in the implementation stage. We're setting the goal. Here's what we want. We're looking at our administrative team, our leaders. Some of you may be on that team, saying, okay, how do we get that done? We don't tell them how to get it done. We tell them what we want done. Here's the end result we're trying to accomplish. But I can tell you, out of all the strategic plans I've been involved in, they're not the same. What Elma needs and Mount Pleasant down the street needs are totally different.
Sure, the needs will be different, but at least by looking at it, I'll have
Right.
a semblance. I
Right,
fully
exactly.
understand that part of it.
And I can definitely, I have no problem. I can send you some samples of completed plans. That's not a problem at all. And I can get you those. But the plans come out, you'll see, is goal. They have goal statements. It has key objectives. It'll have first-year objectives and the first 90-day objectives in the initial plan comes to you.
And you said something about value statements. Can you speak to what those...
Values are core values. They're usually we will statements. We will be fiscally responsible. It's usually those 4 or 5 key must-do statements. They're not wishes. They're not goals. They're must-do statements. So we will be fiscally responsible.
We will have the 10% fund balance,
Yeah.
or whatever.
That's.
Okay.
But usually, a lot of them will be in safe schools.
But those are developed as a part of that.
And it's part of that team, yeah.
Saturday workshop.
Yeah.
So it comes from the community rather
Comes
than...
from everybody, all stakeholders, not just community.
Oh, right.
All stakeholders are there. So you've got support staff there. You've got, bus drivers and food service and custodians and professional staff, support staff, students, parents, community leaders, business leaders, clergy. The idea is to have a cross-cultural look at and have all those voices at the table, just like the strength of the school board. Have 7 very diverse people at the table. We're looking to have 40 or 50 diverse people from different needs, different backgrounds. Okay.
Mr. Cook?
Yeah, a couple of things. I guess one of the first things that popped into my mind is when you say we bring in 40 or 50 community members and they pretty much set up things and we'll have a direction out of that. In CBA 101, one of the first things they teach you is the board sets the direction of the district. And the board is elected by the people to represent the people. So it seems to me like you're taking the direction of the district out of the board and giving it back to the people. Is that a bad thing? I don't know. I'm still weighing that. The other thing is we hear it in the news on a very consistent basis that Michigan is one of the lowest performing educational states. Okay? We hear it constantly. And part of this process, you say we get to pick reference districts out of a dozen or so that you're going to bring out of Michigan. When I look at it, graduation rates or career readiness, one of our goals this year is social and emotional development, which is where the mental health fits in. I look at those things and where we are in comparison to most districts. Can the reference districts be expanded outside the state so that we become not just good in the state or great in the state, we become good or great in the nation? Even the United States education system is flailing compared to throughout the rest of the world. But we in Novi, unique situation, we represent and have representatives out of 60 to 70 different nations taking classes here. Why aren't we looking beyond? And if this comes out of the strategic plan, great. I too would like to see what the end item would look like, some sort of format. Because if you're going to throw this together in that quick a time frame, you've already got to have pretty much a baseline laid out, of what's going to be involved in it. You may not have the specifics for the district, but you probably have a good format, and I'd like to see that before we go any further. I like getting the stakeholders involved. I think we've been doing a very good job of making sure that all our little initiatives here and there are aligned with our four priorities that we have, 4 goals or priorities. So I think we've been very consistent in that, and we've been very consistent to make sure that the objectives that we put forth to Dr. Matthews are aligned with those. We've been working very hard on getting things aligned from top to bottom here. So to me, a strategic plan at this point in time would probably be a review session, more of a review than completely throwing it out and starting over.
Pardon? Oh, Steve, this is Steve. Okay.
I think it's
Can
important.
you
Okay.
hang on to your thought? Do you have anything?
Well, first off, on the community, I agree, it's the boards, and we're not asking you to give that up. What we're asking you to do is involve everybody in that process. Remember, we said it comes back to you for final approval. If you don't like where it's going, we send it back to the committee, and we have further discussions. You're not advocating, you're not giving it away. All we're saying is we want everybody at the table so that, let's face it, in this day and age, it's you did it wrong. We're finger pointers. What we're saying is we can no longer finger point because we're all in it together. When we have stakeholder representation from every group, and when it's the inside staff and all those, we let them tell us who's coming to represent those groups. It starts to build trust that they actually have a voice. How many times have you heard from your staff, they don't hear us? How many times in the community do you hear, they don't hear you? That's what we're trying to do in this process, is to let every voice be heard. But then it comes back to you. You have final say. You're not giving it away. This committee's not approving it. The board's approving it. They're just helping you through that process to expand the number of seats at the big table.
Okay. Go
I'm
ahead,
sorry.
Mrs. Stevenson.
I do like the involvement of the district, because if we're a community school district, who's to be involved? The community. My question is, when you're talking about the other support staff and the teachers, they pick who they're gonna. Mm-hmm. How do you pick? How do you pick the families and the parents? That's my question. Like, is there a questionnaire? Or do you volunteer? Or
Usually, the first place I find them, the ones who come to the input sessions.
okay.
We tell them they can, but we're happy. If you're interested, let Dr. Matthews' office know. You know parents. Your staff know parents. A lot of times, the superintendent will ask building principals, because we want a diverse. We want all the levels covered. We want all the buildings covered, so there's representation. I worked in Ferndale for a while. They have a high school of choice, so we made sure there was school of choice. They have Berkeley. They have Royal Oak. They have Royal Oak Township. We made sure there was representation from each of those communities. They each had different things. They have an African American Parents Network. We met with them individually. We made sure that they had a rep on the committee. So that every stakeholder group. But that's why it's unique to each community, because what they have there, again, somebody else says, you know your community. You know what groups need to be represented at the table. We want the idea, though, is, and we gave them a grid, we want to cover all the levels and have representation across the whole culture. And that's where you guys come in. You know the community. Think about it. Who's the person everybody goes to get information? Mm-hmm. There's those key people in the community. Smaller communities, the barber or McDonald's. Those are the people we want at the committee. We want the seniors. They're underrepresented, but you want a bond? You better have senior representation on this committee because they hold the purse strings. In a lot of communities, that's where you win it or lose bonds nowadays. So this gives you the opportunity to hear all those voices as you go forward, as you go through it.
All right. Mr. O'Connor.
I heard 3 board members say they'd like to see some end product. Did we go out for proposal to look at other vendors that also do strategic plans? I'm thinking Mike Wilmot from the Michigan Leadership Institute. They may have some end products we might want to look at. I know that Oakland University has a whole center that does strategic planning for public schools. I don't know if they go outside the state of Michigan, but I do like Mr. Cook's suggestion that we look at other school districts outside the state of Michigan to benchmark ourselves if we are a high-performing district. If we're want to look at an end product, I'd like to see an end product from a couple of different sources.
We can work with Mr. Morrell. He can get us some samples, and we can supply those.
They're already in your email.
We can supply those to the board tomorrow in the weekly update, so that you can have those.
It's hard to bring samples in from other states because every state does data sampling differently. And so when you're starting to compare apples to oranges when you look at what Michigan and somebody else does. So so it's a lot harder apple to try to pick to get that data from other states. That's why most of us will only look at Michigan, because then you can have some baseline criteria to look at it and understand what that data is telling us versus data from another state that takes it totally different rationale to it.
To answer Mr. O'Connor's other question, I did not look at other vendors or providers. We have a good relationship with MASB, and so they're being your school board association. We bring this to the board for information and discussion tonight. If the board would like us to look other places, we can certainly do that as well.
To the board, but okay. I want to backtrack just for a second. You sent us a note out in August, kind of saying, you were considering this because of the following reasons. You gave us I don't have that in front of me at this point, but just in terms of, I guess my question is, if the board is not leaning towards a strategic plan, how does Dr. Matthews address some of the things that he was hoping to address with this? I'm just curious if the board has given that thought. I know that there's been several times that we brought up revisiting the vision over the last really 2 years. Mm-hmm. I know that you revisited it last year with a lot of your staff to kind of come up with some new things, but really in terms of looking at it to continue to move us forward in spite of all the changes that we're going through. And I do appreciate you pointing out the social emotional piece. I kind of had blanked on that. But really, when is that something that, to Dr. Matthews, attempting to address that piece that he gets dinged on every year on his evaluation, in terms of involving him in our goal setting? Yes.
So, in terms of his evaluation, we actually moved the strategic plan out to an artifact. So the only way he would get dinged is if we didn't do it, because the artifact wouldn't be there. I would argue that a lot of the things that I thought we were going to talk about that tonight on our agenda. A lot of the things that are in the superintendent's goals. I mean, Mr. Cook just mentioned the health and mental well-being piece. I mean, a lot of those things we talk about in terms of the bond and what we're going to do and what resources do we need, how do we start growing the facility assessment, the needs assessment that took place, and what are our needs there. I think it's all mapped out in his evaluation without dinging him. I mean, I guess it would ding him if he doesn't bring the artifact in the strategic plan, and I don't think that's a deal breaker, but that's my personal opinion. The other thing...
You mean the school improvement plan?
No, the strategic plan. We moved that. That was a district goal, and we moved that. We all agreed to move that out to be an artifact under the business and finance measurement of your... So I don't think that hurts your evaluation. In fact, I mean, there's a lot of data points in there through your superintendent goals that I think, guide guide what you need in terms of your evaluation. My only other concern with this process, if I may, is, and it's the one piece that's missing in this, and this is a good process. Please don't misread what I'm saying. This is a good process. One of my concerns is, besides the board not being familiar with seeing an end product, to even think about getting this done by the end of January, I think is rather aggressive. One of the key pieces that are missing in this, in this strategy is the fact that when you get that data, if we want to even go there, is that there be a long and involved debate within the groups of people to understand what that data means and how it's being interpreted, so it's fair to administration that we're all aligned. And that piece, that's a long, involved process in itself, let alone getting a whole strategic plan done by the end of the year. That's just one process point that I think is of concern. I just don't want to lose focus. We've got a great opportunity to address a lot of educational issues with this 2020 bond, and it's all laid out in your superintendent objectives. That's my position.
I'm sorry.
The timeline is it can vary, but understand the process has a lot of success. It's not something we're just coming up with today. There's a lot of background, a lot of history. I understand you're concerned about it, but understand when we walk in that room on that Saturday, we're going to have PhDs to mom and dads. They're all going to understand that data and look at it differently. That's why we bring it that day. We break into small teams of multiple different groups with different people at those tables, and they digest all that data that day, and it works. You'd be surprised when that small group sits down, because that's how change happens in a small group. When they sit down with that data, we have to give them a lot more credit than we sometimes do, because even the moms and dads and the students pick up trends very quickly, and so it does work. The process, the reason we don't draw the process out, it's like anything. The longer we go, the less effective it is, because it's like, oh, we might get... No, we want it approved. We want the board utilizing it. We want everybody in the organization to know this is the plan that we're all following. This is no more Baskin Robbins, no more flavor of the week, no more, we go to a conference, we like something, no, this is the plan going forward, so everybody knows what the board's doing. That's how we build trust. Predictability is one of 5 components of building trust. When they know what the board's going to do and what the board's understanding is, what their expectations are, it starts to build trust with all of it and through the whole organization. So we'll do whatever you guys want. I did send a couple samples to Sheila so she can get them out to you guys. If you need more information, I'm happy to supply it. I can show you. I can send you a data sample so you can see what it looks like, the in-depth of it, or what the PowerPoint looks like for that day. I mean, we can send you stuff, but understand, this is a proven process. It's not, like I said, we've been doing it in my school district for over 25 years. I mean, it's the same process we use in our district, so with great success, and we've had great success all over the state. We do a lot of them, but we'll do whatever you guys want. We're here to support you guys.
I would just like to say that given that we were informed about Dr. Matthews' intentions back in August, it does concern me a little bit that we're coming to the table now. I guess we could have kind of had this all together for the board members that have questions.
No, we were told that this was coming, and that we would get an explanation on what this was all about. My expectation was, and so between that time and today, I had nothing. I was just going to wait till we had this done.
Fair enough.
So
fair enough. Yep.
So what I'm hearing is that we can get the board some additional information. Certainly, we don't have to make a decision tonight. We have a board meeting in 2 weeks. We can have this discussion and try to identify a direction on the 18th. I believe that we have made a lot of progress in the 8 years that I've been here. We have identified goals and stuck to those goals fairly rigidly in some ways. I do think it is time for us as a board and administrative team and community to really develop a process on how we want to move forward. And there's a lot of kind of balls in the air, as has been mentioned this evening, with the potential for an upcoming bond and those kinds of things. And so we just need to kind of come to agreement as how do we want to move forward. And certainly over the next 2 weeks, I'll touch base with all of you and try to get some feedback from you. And if there's questions or concerns or information that you need, we'll certainly provide that. Appreciate Mr. Morrell being here this evening to kind of give this overview. I think it helps clarify exactly what the process for MASB is. And certainly in 2 weeks, we can hopefully have some consensus on how the board would like to move forward.
And the November date was just a placeholder.
Yep,
We're
just a
not locked
placeholder.
into it.
Correct.
We just were trying to get something on a calendar before the schedule's filled up real bad.
Thank you, Mr. Morrell.
And my understanding is if the board decides, you really need to do it when the bulk of the community would be available, meaning between sports seasons. Is that kind of, I mean, that the discussion that we had was.
That's why the 17th of November was one of those windows where the dates, that lined up for you guys, your schedule.
Okay.
Any questions, let me know.
Okay, everybody's got Scott's information, so that if you do think of something else that he can address, please.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for the opportunity to come out and visit again.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Morrell.
Thank you.
Okay, the next is our first opportunity for comments from the audience. This is the first opportunity for comments from the audience related to agenda items. That would be anything that's currently on our agenda for this evening. If there's anyone that would like to address the board, we would just ask that you fill out a green card and hand it to Mrs. Holly, and then identify yourself at the podium. We do limit your time to approximately 5 minutes. Is there anyone that would like? No? Seeing no one? We will move on to our consent items. These are items that don't need any necessary discussion. Dr. Matthews?
There are 2 items on the consent agenda this evening. There are the regular meeting minutes from September 27th, and then an annual high school student leadership state conference field trip. And it's on the consent agenda because it's an annual item. And so those 2 items are on the consent agenda this evening.
Okay, thank you. I would entertain a motion.
I recommend that the Novi Community School Board of Education approve consent items as presented.
Support.
It's been moved by Mrs. Stevenson and supported by Mr. Mena. We don't need any discussion on this, so I will call the question. All those in favor of accepting the consent item as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Motion carries 7-0. Next, we have our action items. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Our first action item this evening is our personnel recommendations, and I will turn to Dr. Kinzer.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. Tonight, we're recommending 3 resignations. First is Angelina Krieger, District Instructional Coach, and Amanda Pirelli, a teacher at Novi Woods, and Crystal Sprague, a special education teacher at Deerfield.
I would entertain a motion.
I move that the Novi Community School District Board of Education adopts the personnel report recommendations as presented.
I support.
It's been moved by Mrs. Stevenson and supported by Mrs. Hood. Is there discussion on these? Mr. O'Connor?
So what's the reason for these resignations, especially at the beginning of the school year? That's a concern.
One is one of our teachers has accepted an administrative position in another district. One of them, along with her spouse, has moved out of the state. She's presently on a leave. And then the third has just decided that this position is not for her.
So it's not moving to another school district, right? Because Novi's the best district to work in.
All right. Other discussion? I assume that we'll need to refill these positions?
Correct.
So you're not done with the hiring yet?
One of them, the employee who's on leave, that position is filled.
Oh, okay.
So 2 will need to be.
2 will need to be filled. Okay, fantastic. So it's been moved and supported, so I will call the question. All those in favor of accepting the personnel report as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Motion carries 7-0. Next, we have our policy manual. At our last meeting, we had discussion about those items that were still left kind of unresolved, and the board has had the opportunity to review those. My intention would be, if it is the board's pleasure, to adopt the policy manual in its entirety, with the changes that we made at our last meeting that everyone has had the opportunity to look through. I know those are in the very first page of the I guess I could turn to you for the resolution. Would you like to read that entire
Certainly.
thing? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. From January 2017 through June 2018, the Governance and Policy Committee, cabinet members, and Kevin Sutton from Lusk Albertson met several times and covered every policy that is currently in place to ensure that the new policy stated the intent of the board. On September 13, 2018, the Committee of the Whole met with Mr. Sutton and went through the new proposed policy manual. The new proposed policy manual is coming before the board tonight for action. You have a list of new policies that differ, that were not in the old policy manual, listed for you. And in addition to those new policies, the board discussed the following policy revisions. Organization and functioning of the board, the proposed policy on board compensation. The proposal is that board members may be paid a stipend of not more than $30 per meeting, up to a total of not more than 52 meetings, including committee meetings, as compensation for their service, as determined annually by the board. The second is meetings of the Board of Education. The proposed policy will read, special meetings of the board may be called by the president or by any two members of the board by providing not less than 24 hours notice to all board members. The notice to board members and the public shall be consistent in manner and form with the requirements of the Open Meetings Act. Behavior, the policy proposal is that the Board of Education delegates to the superintendent the authority to issue long-term suspensions and expulsions pursuant to legally compliant procedures set forth in the Student Code of Conduct. The superintendent's decision on expulsions can be appealed to the board. On curriculum development, the proposed policy is that the superintendent is responsible for the development, implementation, and ongoing evaluation of the school district's curriculum. The superintendent will inform the board of any new curriculum or course offerings or changes to curriculum or course offerings. No new course shall be taught in the schools of this district unless it has been adopted by the board. Other matters of employment, the proposed policy language is no employee shall attempt to sell or influence a student to buy any product, article, instrument, service, or other such item which would directly or indirectly benefit that employee. And then we are adding proposed language on the ownership of works. Students who develop ideas, products, works of art, music composition, and similar items will retain ownership. And then in web accessibility, we have identified that the web accessibility coordinator will be the marketing and public relations specialist, and that will be listed in the board policy manual. And so the recommendation would be that the Novi Community School District Board of Education would approve the new policy manual, including new policies with the proposed language changes as noted above.
All right. So I'd like to entertain a motion on that recommendation.
I move that the Novi Community School District Board of Education approve the new policy manual, including new policies and with the proposed language changes as noted above.
I support.
It's been moved by Mrs. Stevenson, supported by Mrs. Hood. Is there additional comments or questions on the policy manual? Mr. Cook?
When will these policies take place if they are approved by the board tonight?
My belief is if the board approves them tonight, then they become the policies of the district and will take effect immediately. And then we will share. We will get the policy manual online as quickly as possible. We will inform all the administrators of the new policy manual so that they can begin to refer to it in matters of that would affect them in their buildings. But the new policy manual would be implemented as quickly as possible.
Go ahead.
Well, a lot of the changes that were made were either items moved to the board operating procedures, or were going to be in the administrative regulations, the likes of that. Also, there are a number of duplications between the board operating policies and like so. When is the plan to get those all updated to match, to align with these policies? And the duplication, are we going to clear those up? Because there is a code of ethics in the policy manual, there's a code of ethics in the board operating procedures, and actually the code of ethics in the current policies, and none of them match each other. So I tried to cross-reference, and I think I got 3 out of each that matched up. So.
My understanding from talking with Mr. Sutton is that if the policy manual is approved, then that will trigger us to work on the administrative guidelines, and we would bring those back to the board so that you could see what those administrative guidelines are, and that then the board operating procedures, or the BOP, would be cross-referenced with this new policy manual, and we would then, once we cross-reference that and make the needed changes, we'd bring that to the board for discussion and approval as well.
Do we have a timeline on any of that?
The administrative guidelines will probably take a while to go through. Mr. Sutton has experience in other districts, and so he can bring that their administrative guidelines for us to review to use as kind of a first draft. But the administrative guidelines will probably take a little bit of time. I would anticipate at least 2 or 3 months for those administrative guidelines to come back to the board. The board operating procedure, I would think that we could do that fairly quickly since we have that document. We just need to cross-reference it with the new policy manual, and then we could bring that to the board, I would think, before the end of the year.
Do we have a comprehensive, I know there were a lot of things noted, but do we have a comprehensive list of what needs to change in the operating procedures and what needs to be definitely called out?
I'm pretty confident that we have a pretty comprehensive list. Mr. Sutton has worked with the board policy, governance and policy committee, and I think we have a comprehensive list. I'm pretty confident, but we can review that to make sure. But I believe I have a great deal of confidence that we have a good list.
Okay. Maybe. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead and finish.
Well,
your
I was
point.
just going to say, I think that some of these were even already in the employee handbook, I think. We talked about, which is why we took them out, because they were already, like, it says move to employee handbook, but I think some of them were already located there, so some of that work is already, it was duplicated in 2 places. So I think that we could actually move all this stuff into the BOP. I mean, with Sheila's assistance, we could pull everything out and put it in the BOP, and then the Board Governance and Policy Committee could just kind of review it to make sure it was in order before bringing it to the board. My guess is we could probably manage to do that in the next month if everybody's available from that committee. So we could do that portion of it, and then the administrative
Guidelines. I'll talk to Mr. Sutton after. If the board takes action tonight, I'll talk to Mr. Sutton as soon as possible, and we'll figure out a plan.
Okay.
Are there any pitfalls for having policies without administrative guidelines? I mean,
the policies guide us. Administrative guidelines is how you operationalize that. And so my sense, the danger is that there's a situation that would arise that would require us to have kind of a unique kind of example. But I don't believe there's a significant danger in moving forward without those administrative guidelines, because the administrative guidelines are what guide the administrator, and so those are the kind of the procedures that we work through, and so we would look at the policy, and if a situation arose that we would need to apply the policy, we would use our best judgment, and that's what the administrative guidelines are. So I don't believe there's significant danger in moving forward that way.
the only reason I mention that is because we moved from policies that tended to be more specific to less specific, which would mean that for these, it's more important to have those administrative guidelines than when we were with Neola. So we're going to have a gap period of time.
A little bit.
Okay.
Some of them, though, we have administrative guidelines written around some of them already that we utilize, you know what I mean? But, yes, Mr. Cook.
How are we addressing the duplication of the Code of Ethics? We
Well,
have it in both the Bill of Process and in the policies now.
If the board agrees to this policies, that's where it would rest, and it would be this one.
It would be removed from the Bill of Process, or Board Operating Procedures.
Yes, so it would be removed from that.
Sorry,
It
I'm
would-
used to BOP being Bill of Process.
That's okay. Yes, it would be removed from that. This would take precedence over that one. It's a good question. Other
One other heartache I have over this is we are removing a policy that had a student representative on the board. And with all the discussion tonight about having stakeholder representation and the push to have a student voice in a lot of things, I'm surprised that we're actually removing that policy and not moving forward and trying to recruit a student representative on the board.
We actually removed the policy because we don't have a student representative on the board. So we certainly could talk about instituting a policy that would incorporate the use of the student. I would certainly be open to having that
Are
discussion.
we removing it because Lusk and Albertson did not have something?
No.
According to the list, it's just because it wasn't our practices, and we had one in there, so why remove it and then bring one back?
The kind of the policy on the student representative, the students that typically came to the board were not true kind of representatives. They were more information sharers on things. And so I think it would be wise for the board to have that discussion as to how and what they would like the student representative to be like. You know, do you want them to participate in discussions on issues that come before the board? You know, we had one intrepid young man a couple of years ago who took it upon himself to engage the board in some discussions because he stayed for the whole meeting, but that was unusual. Most of them would leave after they shared their information. And so I think it is a worthwhile discussion for the board to have because, you know, ultimately having student voice, I think, is an important consideration as we make decisions on the board.
Certainly something we can make a little note of to have that discussion. Other comments about the policy manual? Board comfortable taking a vote? Has it been moved and supported, Mr. Mena? Can I ask you that? It's been...
It has.
Yeah.
We have a motion by Ms. Stevenson and a second by Ms. Hood.
Okay. I will call the question. All those in favor of adopting the new policy manual, including these proposed changes, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Now I have to go back to my agenda. I apologize. Oh, okay. Our next is merit pay. We had discussion about this last week. I would, I know
We
that...
just do a 5-minute break.
Oh, certainly. Yes, certainly. It's 8:17. We'll make it an 8-minute break.
8:25.
So we'll come back at 8:25.
Thank you.
You're going to have to Lysol your machine.
Are you okay? what do they call that level?
The garden.
And we are back at our October 4th regular meeting of the Novi Board of Education. We took a brief break, and we are at our third action item, which is merit pay. And before we get started discussing it, I just want to say that between meetings, because we've only had a week between meetings, there was a little bit of discussion that Mr. Smith had with Dr. Matthews about some additional possibilities for use of some of the funds, because we are going to have more than we have allocated. We're going to allocate more than the expenditures from this current proposal that's before us tonight. So my suggestion was that we will look to approve this with the understanding, and with a motion where the understanding would be that we would look at how the Teacher of the Year could be maybe altered to incorporate emeritus piece, and that we would all have a better understanding of that process that Oakland County Schools uses as well when they're determining that, so that we can have a full discussion of that at a later date in order to possibly use that as for some of the funds. So does that make sense to everyone?
I hadn't heard that, but
Okay, well, it kind of came up in the last couple of days, just with a lot of the number crunching and the understanding that there will be unallocated funds from this year based on the number of teachers that have gone through that certification process that we'll be talking about. So rather than kind of, I don't want to say hoarding the funds, but rather than not using them for some type of merit, we'll have a discussion and a proposal, hopefully from the administration, that makes sense going forward for that some additional funds to be used.
Can we make another suggestion of something else to look at then? If there was if there's additional funds, could those, because of the people that are not applying for the certification, could those funds be then moved over to Section 2, and then it'd be that way? I mean, can we have a few options to look at?
Oh,
Yes. Yep.
Did that make sense?
Mhm.
Did you understand what I was saying?
Yes.
So if we don't have National Board Certified Teachers,
Take those
you
funds,
take those funds
and move it over to Section
and
2.
make sure they're used in Section 2.
you'd have
And
a
that- that is the plan.
right.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that's the plan as it is, right?
So that would be there would be a range. There's
Right.
just some additional.
But we would ensure that Section 2 continues to have as much money as it was funded this year as we move forward. And quite frankly, with the proposal, it will be more than what we had this year. So.
Okay, is everybody somewhat clear on that?
Can I paraphrase what I understood on that?
Certainly.
Okay, so what we're saying is we have Section 2 that we agree on. We have Section 1 where we're looking at giving money to for those who complete National Merit Board certification. And any funds that aren't used for that, which we're calling Section 1, we would then reallocate into Section 2.
Correct.
And then we're also looking at some additional, another merit section in essence for
Section 3.
Teachers of the Year, with funds not yet discussed, meaning amount.
Funds yet not identified.
Not identified.
Or not designated. Right.
Okay.
And the discussion really, I think it's a legitimate discussion. I just haven't had an opportunity with the Novi Educational Foundation Board to have that discussion. And so we need to have that discussion with them so that they're in agreement that we could have a district representative on that committee, that we would kind of look at the application to see if we could increase the robustness of it and to make sure that it is truly a merit award.
Okay, then just one more point of clarification. That new section would be with funds above and beyond what we're allocating here, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, and that would, my suggestion was that would come back to us before December, because the applications need to be in.
They go out in December and have to be back in January, I think, right, Dr. Kinson?
So the board would have another opportunity to discuss that piece of it
Correct.
at a later date to fully flesh that out, because obviously we didn't have a full discussion of that at the last meeting, although there was some support for it. I think there were a lot of questions about it too, like what is the application process? I know Tom's intimately I'm familiar with it because of his work on the NEF, but I think there were some questions. I mean, I certainly had some questions because even though I served on the NEF, I have not seen the application. I don't know that much about the process. I know Oakland Schools guides some of it. I don't know who finally does the selection, things like that. Yes, Mr. O'Connor?
One other point of clarification, I think you said it, Dr. Matthews, but it's not written here. So when we do get a motion, the payout on section 2, you've got the percentages for student proficiency, student growth, the English learner progress, and students with disabilities. But we're going to go to at least hard numbers, right, to match
Correct.
last year. So instead of percentages,
it'll
be a minimum of 40,000, 90,000, 35,000, and 35,000.
Correct.
Okay, I just want, and I'm sure you said that. it's not written here, so I want to make
Correct.
sure
And that will
our
be,
resolution's
and those
correct.
will be dollar figures that would be paid or potentially paid out, and then FICA and above that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so are we clear on that? Yes, Mrs.
So I have another question regarding the NEF piece. Have those those applications haven't gone out to?
They have not.
Okay. My other question is, my concern is, can we just wait to 2019, 2020 to do that piece of it, due to the fact that you only have a couple months to get that out, and then flush it all the way out and make sure it's like for merit and it's not subjective, and the criteria might need to be changed. I think that might take a little bit longer than we were anticipating.
I will come back to the board with some feedback from the NEF and also from the application. And if it looks like it would take longer, then I would say that we delay it to make sure we get it right versus rushing it just
Exactly.
for the sake of having something in place. So that would I would come back to the board with a recommendation based on the discussions that I had with the NEF.
Okay, so, yes, Mr. Smith.
Just to provide some clarity, because I know in a conversation I had with President Murphy, it was helpful to remind that the NEF really does nothing with regards to selecting an outstanding teacher of the year. And that word's usually left out, but that's what the actual award is outstanding teacher of the year. Those nominations have nothing to do with the Novi Educational Foundation. It's a process that the teachers go through with Oakland schools. So part of my commitment to our committee and to the board is to do a little bit more investigation into who actually serves on the Oakland County Selection Committee, selection committee. I also will get to all of you a copy of an application so that you can see what it's composed of. In a conversation I had with Dr. Matthews, he simply said that it would be helpful if there was a stronger meritorious piece to the application, something that would ask for the applicant to address something along the student growth model or scores, or something that would be a metric that would actually demonstrate performance above and beyond that would be deserving of merit pay. Me stepping back to looking at this year, to remind everybody, directionally, we agreed initially on a $200,000 dollar amount, and we thought, well, let's take half of it and use it towards a merit system where we would recognize an outstanding achievement, and then the other half, or $100,000, would be applied towards the model that was used in the first year that we distributed funds. When we look at how the math will play out for this year, 18-19, we won't have anyone that will complete the national certification, so we agreed to look back retro to reward and recognize those that have already achieved it. That only equaled $50,000. So if we were going to target $50,000 or $100,000, we were still falling way short of that. The work that I did with our committee, it's just really difficult to determine who would be who should get this money, or who's deserving of a merit award. It was brought up at the board table, I think by Mr. O'Connor or by another board member, that we consider making an award to a teacher of the year, or an outstanding teacher of the year. So I just took a similar approach that we did with the national merit certification and applied it to teacher of the year. We went back and looked at people that have got it. I took a 5-year look back at teacher of the year winners, teachers like Emily Polonsky as an example of a previous winner. And if we add up those teachers that previously won the award and the 3 that would win the award this year, it just so happened to equal $49,000, and the math worked with regards to what our intent was as far as taking $100,000 and giving it as an award and taking the other $100,000 and applying it towards phase 2. The Novi Educational Foundation simply receives the winners that Oakland Schools has already selected for the elementary, middle, and high school. So we're not selecting winners, we're just choosing of the 3 winners who gets the lease of a car for 2 or 3 years. So one person gets a new car and the other 2 get a great job. So I think the idea that we talked about at the board table was, well, what if every one of those 3 got an award, whether it was $3,500 or whatever we determine. So again, the NEF has nothing to do with its credentials of picking a winner, but I didn't know that door was there. That's cool. So anyway, I just wanted to provide that clarification.
Okay. So, and we can have a full, more
Yeah.
fleshed out discussion once
When we
Dr.
bring that
Matthews is
back.
able to talk to the parties that are involved in that, and then come back, and then we can discuss that whole retroactive piece, and we'll have more information for the entire board on that. So, given that, I'm going to ask for a motion on the merit pay proposal.
If I could present the motion and then have somebody approve the motion as presented.
Okay,
Sure.
It would be that the Novi Community School District approve the 2018-19 merit plan as presented with Section 2 merit awards of $40,000 student proficiency, $90,000 student growth, $35,000 English learner progress, and $35,000 students with disabilities.
all right.
So moved?
I'll support that.
It's been moved by Mr. Smith and supported by Mr. O'Connor. Is there any additional questions or comments, Mr. O'Connor?
Yes, last week we discussed there was in here that they had to be employed for the entire school year.
Right.
And we discussed that does not necessarily bode well for those that, we find in the middle of the school year. I don't see verbiage in here for prorating it based off of how long they're employed and them having to be employed on the last day of school.
Those would both be worthy amendments to the motion.
Okay, so we have a current motion.
I'll support Mr. Cook's amendment.
Okay, so Mr. Cook has made an amendment to the original motion. Does not the first person have to withdraw their motion?
I'd withdraw my motion.
Okay,
Okay,
now we can start from scratch.
okay,
So it is moved as amended.
okay.
Moved as amended.
Mr. Cook is moving as amended. Mr. O'Connor is supporting the amended proposal, so we'll have some language built into.
Yep, and I'll
the merit
revise, I'll get
program.
that out to the board.
Fantastic. I will call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Yes, Mr. O'Connor.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Dr. Matthews and the Merit Committee. I know that I've been a pain in the butt on this issue, but I'm extremely passionate about it. This is not perfect, but it's a step in the right direction. I appreciate the effort, and I know it's difficult. I know it's hard to wade through this, but it's a step in the right direction. I appreciate the effort. Thank you.
Perfect. Next, we have, just for information and discussion, our winter tax levy. Dr. Matthews.
I know that all of you have been waiting breathlessly for this agenda item this evening, so I will let Ms. Minnick introduce this agenda item.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. At the June 14th, 2018 regular board meeting, the Novi Board of Education formally certified the 18-19 tax levies as indicated in your packets. Last fall, at the November 16th, 2017 board meeting, the Novi Board of Education resolved to levy 50% of the taxes in the summer and 50% of the taxes in the winter. Thus, the 2018 winter tax levy is 1/2 of the levies authorized in June 18, as listed in your packets. This item is presented for information this evening and will be brought back to the board for authorization of the winter tax levy at the November 15th board meeting.
thank you. Is there discussion? This is something we are required by law to do every year. It is also something that we have chosen to split up as a board, so we levy part in the summer and part in the winter, which I think probably helps many of our homeowners and our taxpayers. So if there is, yes?
I just have one question. Did you say November 15th board meeting? Did you
Yes.
come back?
I did, but that next board meeting is November
16th.
Oh, I was wondering why
October
we were doing
18th.
it. Don't we
October
have-
18th.
Yeah.
October 18th. I'm sorry, I misspoke.
Okay, thank you.
October 15th.
Got it.
Oh, it is listed.
Yeah, we'll get. No,
It's October 18th.
right.
Oh, 18. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
The summer one will be coming in November for you.
Right, but, oh,
So,
okay. Okay, so once again, this will come back to us at our next
Next
board
board.
meeting, which
Correct.
is October
18th.
18th, for approval, unless there's any additional questions on that. Okay, we will move on to our next opportunity for comments from the audience. This is an opportunity for anyone in our audience to address the board about anything in our jurisdiction. We do have a few brave souls that have been here all evening. We thank you for being here with us. It doesn't look like they want to speak to us this evening, however. So we will move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the superintendent's report. Dr. Matthews.
thank you, Ms. Murphy. Earlier this week, it was announced that Village Oaks Elementary School is being recognized as a National Blue Ribbon School by the U.S. Department of Education. The school is recognized as an exemplary high-performing school. These schools are among their state's highest performing schools as measured by state assessments or nationally normed tests. Student subgroup performance and high school graduation rates are also at the highest levels. The staff, past and present, at Village Oaks is to be commended for their hard work. The families of Village Oaks have a lot to do with this award as well, and their support and encouragement and commitment to Village Oaks contribute to its success. And we certainly are appreciative of the students of Village Oaks who work hard every day to learn and grow. This Saturday, October 6th, the Novi High School Marching Band is hosting Fanfare. This is the 28th Fanfare show. 11 bands, including Novi High School, will perform beginning at 5:30 p.m. Novi High School is scheduled to perform at 8:40 p.m. I would encourage our community to come and support these bands and to see what incredible work that they do. On Sunday, the Japanese Business Society of Detroit is hosting the Japan Festival at Novi High School beginning at 1 p.m. This is a great cultural experience, and I would encourage our community to participate in this event as well. The Novi Athletic Boosters are hosting their annual craft show on October 27th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Novi High School. There will be over 180 crafters there. On October 11th, next Thursday night at 7 p.m., the League of Women Voters will be hosting a candidate forum for the Novi Community School District Board of Education election. We have invited all the candidates for the 4-year and the 2-year Board of Education seats to be here to answer questions posed by the League of Women Voters moderator. This will also be taped and broadcast in the district. And finally, I would like to express my appreciation to everyone who helped with homecoming last week. Our staff did a tremendous job with Spirit Week, and the parade and the activities were wonderful. And that's my report for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. Lots going on. All right, next we have our opportunity for administrative reports. Dr. Minnick, or Ms. Minnick. Sorry, elevated you. Ms. Minnick.
Thank you, President Murphy. I gave a lengthy report last week. This evening, I do not have a report for you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Kinzer.
I have no report this evening either.
All right.
And
Dr. Weber.
So much, no such luck. Incredibly grateful. We'll start at no. So this week, Matt Smith from WXYT Channel 7 came to the middle school and did a spot. I'm not sure when it's going to run on our flexible furnishings, and had an opportunity to explain to him the why behind it, the notion of really the third teacher in any space is the environment. So you have the teacher themselves, the student who acts as teacher, and the actual environment itself. Very eye-opening for him. I was appreciative that he spent a good amount of time with us. He was in Miss Boersma's classroom for some amount of time, as well as Miss McCurdy's classroom. So we will let Dr. Matthews know and Sheila know when that's going to air. Spent some time at the high school this week, visiting pre-algebra, algebra, IB, SL, math courses, statistics, honors algebra courses to get a bit of a gauge on our high school math programming. And, you know, we're often very proud of our low class sizes, K1, 2, but
The last class I went to was statistics, so I started to average, like, so how many classes did I go to? And then took the number of kids I saw, and then divided that, and 21 kids a class in the classrooms that I went to. Stunning, right? At our high school. And you look at the opportunity that our kids in Novi have, it's really incredible. But the absolute highlight of the week, and perhaps a highlight of my professional career, occurred Monday night at the Novi Public Library. We had 10 of our students lead a community discussion around mental health and well-being. And these kids not only did 20 minutes in front of 60 adults, but they then led 2 breakout groups and dialogue groups. And the feedback that we received on it was incredible. I took some of the comments. This one right here, though, really hit me. This is from a parent. Thank you for openly addressing what we silently endure. If you were in that room, and there's a parent, I think, in the audience tonight who's in that room, Miss Murphy was there, as well as Dr. Matthews, and didn't have a feeling in your stomach that made you feel sick when you heard what our kids are going through at the high school level, then you're not human. Our kids described the feeling of being in competition with each other to get into highly selective universities, about getting 3 hours of sleep a night, about schools like the University of Michigan requiring kids in Novi to take an inordinate amount of AP and IB classes, while kids in other districts may not have to. Parents had no idea that was the case, and that's how our universities ran. So out of that, Dr. Matthews and I were at a peer district meeting on Tuesday and really talked with those districts about what we can do to start addressing this with the colleges and universities. That was one piece of it. The courage of these 10 kids, the 60 caring adults, and that powerful night where our kids bravely shared the truth of their anxiety, their depression, and their struggles, and parents bravely shared their absolute concern for their own children, also their struggle with how to even talk to their own kids, how to interact with their own children. Exceptionally powerful, and I hope, Bobby, you can say a couple words to it, because it was just one of those nights that, you know, you go in and you're thinking, okay, this is going to be interesting, and you walk out and have no idea how profound it's going to be. I've had conversations with 4 parents this week who called and just said, like, I need to let you know I can't get this out of my mind. Like, what are we going to do? What can we do to help these kids? What can we do? Why weren't there more people there? Well, we only had room for 60. When we look around the room, as far as there's a lot of questions we could ask of who wasn't there. The goal would be, though, and I always try to look at things of, it's a great start of who can be there. And how can we get more of our community involved in supporting our kids who are amazing. I mean, they really are. So, I'd like to thank Melissa Matson, my colleague, who's been a stalwart in helping put these events together, Megan Wheat, who is a student here in alumni, and also Darby Hoppenstedt for working with these kids to get them in a position to have the poise and confidence to deliver the way they did. So that's my report. Thank you.
I'll just say real quick, I know we're board communications next, so if it's okay with the board, I'll just tag on to the bravery, really, that some of those kids showed in sharing. And it was a really diverse group of parents, which I thought was fantastic. And really, some of the things the kids shared, I am certain that some parents heard things that their own child maybe has not been comfortable saying, but I think they heard it, like just about pressure and wanting to feel like if they do their best, even if they don't get that A, that needs to be enough. And for some kids' parents, maybe it isn't, or maybe they feel like they should be doing better, and just knowing that they're enough. And I think that it was neat at the end of the night that you allowed parents to kind of address those students where I think they also heard the care and concern, which, hopefully that goes a little bit of a little ways towards not just making them feel heard, but also making them having a little less pressure that we get it, we understand, we're trying to help, and that there's other people out there that share, their concerns. So,
and what Ms. Murphy was referencing at the end of the night, we asked for is there one parent who could simply address the kids and perhaps thank them? And I think we had 8
yeah.
in there, and in listening to the kids heard what the parents were saying, so you're 100% right.
And vice versa, which I thought was fantastic. Nobody had their phones out either, which was
It's awesome.
was another really neat thing, that there was no real distractions. I mean, it was really intent, a lot of intent concern on the part of our parents, which is, we know we have fantastic parents in this community, and a lot of them there to really try and understand what they can do and what's going on with their kids and the kids in the district. So I will open up to other board communication. Are there board members that have things that they would like to share this evening about things they've been involved in? Mr. Smith.
I want to share an observation that I had because I've thought about it all week, and it still is amazing to me. And maybe all of you know this, but I didn't know it, so I want to share it with the public as well. So this past Friday, I went to the homecoming football game, and although the weather wasn't ideal, I had an advantage in that I was invited to go into the press box. So I went into the press box, and I think all of you know Trustee Mena and Trustee Cook and Trustee O'Connor all serve in a capacity there as spotters, and they do data input into like real time, what's happening, what player did this, how many yards did they gain. Paul was running the electronic scoreboard, and I'm not kidding you guys. It was amazing. They had 5 laptops going at any given. I mean, I'm serious. It was, and I thought, wow, how long have you guys been doing this, or do you do this every game? And they do, and Dennis is sitting there with binoculars trying to read the numbers of who made the tackle, and I just thought it was so cool that you 3 guys give of yourselves and give of your time in your professional capacity to be able to do some of that. And that's just another advantage that trickles down to the kids and the athletes and the parents. And you're tweeting out or whatever, you've got a website where at real time a parent could see what's going on in the game. And it takes a little bit to impress me, and I was really, really impressed with the work that you guys do. So I want to thank you for that on behalf of the students and the parents of those athletes. So.
Fantastic. Other things that board, Mr. Cook?
One question and one comment. The needs assessment, facilities assessment. We've kind of been promised that since February, March, April. No, it's October. How is that coming?
It's going to be presented at capital projects and then come to the board. And so we are in the process of making sure that it fulfilled our kind of goal, and then it'll come to the board in the next few weeks.
October 18th, I think, is our capital projects meeting.
October 22nd, I believe.
Oh, what, the 22nd?
I'm not good with my dates this evening. But the 18th is the financial audit presentation.
Oh, the financial audit presentation. That's what I was really looking forward to. But the capital projects committee is meeting before the end of the month to go over the review, and then it will come to the board in November.
Okay. The other comment I want to make is we have a lot of kids in this district that really get into the robotics. And right now, a lot of them are through the FLL and the junior FLL, which are the 2 lower levels for K3 and 4-6. They're heavily into their season. The theme this year is Into Orbit for the FLL, which coming up on the 50th anniversary of the lunar landing. There's space missions, and they've got a little over a month to get prepared because their qualifying tournaments are November 17th. So we will end up losing a lot of parents and everything on November 17th to our qualifying tournaments throughout the region.
So maybe we
because
need to
we do have over, I do believe last year we had in excess of 30-some teams, FLL teams in the Novi area. So.
Okay, good to know. Well, it's possible we could look at a date between the winter and spring season if we decide to move forward with that and alter the date. It was a placeholder. We wanted to get word out.
No, I understand. It's just this is something important to these kids coming up, and they're having fun programming these robots and getting this stuff done. So if even if you don't have a kid, it's fun to go watch the tournaments because this is when they start to get into it. It's not the not the theatrics that the high school kids have with the, well, I can't say with the costumes, because some of the kids here, are in costumes, but it's really a theatrical presentation actually too. So.
And where is that taking place?
Well, there's a number of places. The local ones. There's one in Heartland. There's one in South Lyon. There's one down in downriver. There's a number of them all over the place. But the main weekend is the 17th. The weekend after that, a lot of them, if they can't get into one on the 17th, will be in December 2nd, I do believe. So.
Okay, thank you. Anybody, other board members have communication? No? Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
Been moved by Mrs. Stevenson, supported by Mr. Smith. All those in favor of adjourning for the evening, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you for being with us this evening.